One thing we know we won't see is the New Orleans Saints in the playoffs. They did their job yesterday, Mario. Pretty dominant win over the Atlanta Falcons. Final score ended up being 30-20, but I mean the Saints were up 30-13 at one point. They were up 24-6. They were in control really from kickoff in that football game. Played really well. They covered. They went over, which, by the way, got to give you a hat tip here. The Saints had hit like the under 7 straight times, and you called your shot and said, I've just got a feeling, man. Falcons defense isn't very good. You're getting Ramchick back. Let's see. I think it's going to go over. And the over hit, man. It did. So definitely a good call for you there. 9-8 against the spread, 9-8 straight up, 7-10 to the under on the season for the Saints. They missed the first playoffs for the first time since 2016. They will pick 18th in the NFL draft.
Yeah, man, I guess it was a good call on the over, although I did not foresee Trevor Siemian tearing up the Falcons instead of Taysom Hill. But how fitting that the season ends that way with Taysom getting hurt and Siemian once again coming in relief, which is the only time he's won games for the Saints.
I was about to say, Trevor Siemian off the bench is a gamer.
Apparently.
I mean, that's when he's at his best.
First 3 passes, 2 of them were touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean the first one was a really nice throw that he made. He made a couple of nice throws in that game, but I think you definitely did see the difference having Ramchick back made in the Saints offense. And Alvin Kamara went for 130 yards on the ground behind an offensive line that was at least featuring McCoy, Ruiz, and Ramchick.
You see the improvement in Kamara's game, and it's unfortunate he had to miss so much time, but running between the tackles, he's gotten a lot patient. His vision has gotten better, and I love the improvement that I'm seeing from him in that regard. And you mentioned Ryan Ramchick. Having him back was huge from the opening drive. The Saints scored a touchdown on their opening drive for the first time all season, and it's unfortunate that you can never really get him and or Armstead back in the fold, but still, Musso, for the Saints, after that 5-game losing streak, to rally and win 4 out of the last 5 games, I thought was really impressive. And I think you and I share the same opinion that if the Saints were right, or at least not whatever we saw in that Monday night game against the Dolphins, they could have easily won the last 5 games and made the playoffs. But this team deserves a lot of credit, I think, just for staying together. That being said, you do go back throughout the course of the season and see some missed opportunities. The loss to the Falcons at home when you rallied and made the comeback. The loss to the Giants when you were up 21-10 in the fourth quarter. Like, there is some missed opportunity here. It's not all hunky-dory. But that being said, everything that the Saints went through this season, since Drew Brees retired, right after coming into the season, you're displaced by the hurricane. You had to start 4 different quarterbacks throughout the course of the season. Both your offensive tackles, Armstead and Ramchick, as we mentioned, were injured for a big chunk of the year. Every single starter along the defensive line, except for Cam Jordan, suffered an injury that made them miss time at some point in the season. And as you know, Cam had to miss a game and had that streak snapped due to COVID. Michael Thomas never played, suspensions to Harris and Onyemata, COVID, just so much for this team to navigate. And most teams in the NFL, Musso, most of the 32, would not have been able to persevere, and they definitely would not have been able to finish with a winning record.
That's for sure. And really, 2 games were disrupted by COVID for the Saints. If you count the first Panthers game when half the coaching staff was out because of coronavirus. 58 starters along the team along the way as well. 58 different starters, as Mike Triplett told us. That's an NFL record. Just go along with the 4 quarterbacks. It was a roller coaster. I mean, I know that's just a really simple way to say it, but there were some really high highs and some really low lows for the Saints. I mean, obviously, look, the game you talked about there with the loss to the Giants is probably one of their lowest points of the season. That was with Jameis Winston as well. I mean, that was before everything really got out of hand and went haywire, and you had that 11-point lead and blew it in the fourth quarter at home against, I mean, the Giants aren't good, but hey, Joe Judge gets to keep his job. But so, I mean, you factor in that. I'd go as far as to say, man, you know, the COVID with the Carolina game, the first one was terrible. The Tennessee game. How about, I mean, the Saints arguably could have won. That's the 1 seed in the AFC right now, and the Saints arguably were the better team that day and should have won that game. So, I mean, there's just, you beat Tampa twice. You beat New England. Look what they did against playoff teams and division winners. The highs were really high, the lows were really low. Roller coaster, yo-yo, whatever you want to call it for the Saints this year. It was really disappointing that the Rams could not get the job done yesterday, to have a 17-point lead in that game, to take the lead after you blow that, to take the lead again with about 1:27 or so left in the game, only to give up a touchdown at the gun there. It just, I mean, Matt Stafford, he has struggled mightily down the stretch here for Los Angeles, and Mario, I know we talked about it. Just about anyone who broke down that game said the Rams can win it, but Stafford can't turn the ball over. And like he had been doing the past 3 weeks, and he turned the ball over way too many times, and it was the undoing for the Rams.
8 interceptions now in 3 games for Matt Stafford. Like, that has to be so concerning if you're a Rams fan. And I just remembered this stat right before the show, Musso. Sean McVay, as the head coach of the Los Angeles Rams, was 45-0 when leading at halftime. He is now 45-1 because the Rams just had to screw over the Saints one more time, I guess. But that's what happens when you leave it up to other teams.
And Kyle Shanahan's domination of Sean McVay continues.
Yeah, that too.
It's wild how bad the 49ers have been against the rest of that division, but they own Sean McVay and the Los Angeles Rams.
It's wild. We can use a whole segment talking about how just unfortunate all the series of events were yesterday in that game and how it resulted in the Saints not making the playoffs. But I think for now we should just focus on the season that was and kind of going forward. And coming into the season, Musso, we talked a lot about the 2 veteran leaders on this defense, that being Cam Jordan and Demario Davis. And a big key to the season was, for me at least, those guys had to be dudes. They had to keep playing at a championship caliber level, despite the fact that they're both approaching their mid-30s and are towards the back end of their NFL career. Demario Davis, at this point, he's like the Marcus Colson of defense. Like, he's going to come out, be elite, be one of the best at his position every year. He's just never going to make the Pro Bowl. We as Saints fans had to accept that. I guess it's all good. And then I must say, I was a little wrong about Cam Jordan coming into the season. I didn't think he was totally declining, but I thought he had lost at least a little bit of a step. You saw that reflected in the stats last season. But Musso, he finished his season with 12.5 sacks. That's 7th in the NFL, top 10 in the league, same as Aaron Donald. And Cam Jordan played 1 less game than Aaron Donald. Both of these guys are under contract coming into next season. Both of them continue to be the heart and soul of this defense, and both of them still playing very productive football.
You weren't the only one who had questions about Cam Jordan. Plenty of people did nationally and locally, and I understand why. It was a down year in 2020 for him, and this one didn't start off great. But he started to find it a little bit there halfway. Then came the missed game for COVID, and when Cam Jordan came back off of that game, he looked like he was in his second, third year in the league again. Like, that's how rejuvenated he looked after that. His play was, you can't overstate how massive it was for them down the stretch. Marcus Davenport, too, for what it's worth. To have both of those guys out there, it allowed the Saints, and David Onyemata, it allowed the Saints to rush 4, and they're very good at that, as you can see. I mean, that's a 3-headed monster that not many NFL teams can boast. New Orleans can, and Cam Jordan, I believe it was now 8 sacks over the last 4 games of the season for him after coming back from COVID. The tear he went on, I mean, he looked like he was back in his prime, and I'm not saying that's the level he's actually at, but the stats he put up say it is. Like you said, 7th in the NFL, same amount of sacks as Aaron Donald, who's widely thought of as the best defensive player in the league, although TJ Watt might have something to say about that as we continue on in their careers. But that's a level of production that I don't think anyone foresaw from Cam Jordan coming into the year.
And going forward, the defensive line is the strength of this team. You saw it in the last couple of games. Like you said, after the suspension is all for Cam, or after the COVID game that he had to miss, it's when Davenport came back, and it's when Onyemata started to play like David Onyemata again. Because I think he was really rusty coming out of that suspension. He wasn't playing football at the same caliber that he was the couple of years before. And you even saw in the preseason, Sean Payton was leaving him out there against like 3rd and 4th stringers, so he would not be rusty. I thought he was when he first came back from his suspension, but from the Tampa Bay game on, David Onyemata was awesome. He had a big sack in the game yesterday as well. So not just having Cam Jordan, but it looks like they finally got Marcus Davenport to a point where he's consistently healthy, and David Onyemata is back as well. Hopefully they can get Peyton Turner in the fold. I thought the draft class, Musso, was great all in all when you consider how Werner played, how Adebo played, but a little disappointing that you only saw Peyton Turner for 5 games. If you can get him in the fold and combine that with what you already have with Onyemata, with Cam Jordan, and with Davenport, you're going to have one of the better D-lines in the NFL going forward.
You will. And, I mean, I'm double-checking this, but I'm pretty sure that each Jordan, Onyemata, and Marcus Davenport all had a sack yesterday. Let's see, there's 1.5 for Davenport, 1 for Cam Jordan, half a sack for David Onyemata. So, I mean, they were all involved in that as well. And you mentioned Paulson Adebo there before we had to break. Yeah, I mean, that was the question. A guy who had sat out 2020, his last year of college football, how long was it going to take him to adapt? You heard there towards the end of training camp that he was starting to string together some good practices. You saw him flash a little bit in the preseason, But, man, when the lights came on in the regular season, Paulson Adebo, more often than not, was very, very good. Got off to the hot start, having the interception of Aaron Rodgers in the first game of the season. He was all over the field for a good portion of the 17 games, and the future seems bright for him for sure.
Yeah, and I don't think the Saints expected to really use him this much. I just remembered yesterday that Patrick Robinson just kind of randomly retired throughout training camp. And remember coming into the year, man, just how worried we were about the cornerback position and the lack of depth there. Paulson Adebo looks like a first-round talent that the Saints were fortunate enough to get in the third round, and that's huge for this defense going forward.
So the Saints finished their season 9-8. They will not be in the playoffs. Got some work to do this offseason as well. Free agents, Marcus Williams, Jameis Winston, which that's going to be interesting. Quan Alexander, Traquan Smith, and P.J. Williams.